Okay, I think one of the more provocative thoughts that I've had, I mean, in the sense that it stimulates me somewhat, is the idea that we may not go back to a kind of normal condition. The 21st century probably started in 2008, not 2000, and I think that many people are operating in the manner of 1914. You know, the First World War has started, but we're going to go back to the old world. And the old world never came back. And we have a situation in which we need to get to 1920 as soon as possible. The modern world emerged very suddenly, and I think the 21st century world is a world of constraints and opportunities. But the constraints are not new. We have, as a country, before been in a situation where we were on our own. There was no banking system. The immigrants were coming in. There was no tax base. In fact, there was no taxation. And yet, we created wealth, tremendous amount. And that was approximately 1850. You know, some of the new urbanists have been yearning for 1920. But the situation in 1920 was one already of wealth and sophisticated institutions. In 1850, people came and created cities, and essentially created a continent and created transportation and cultural buildings without a banking system, without government help, you know, on their own. And that is the situation that may hold lessons for us. Now, interestingly, in this country, 1850 wasn't that long ago, and there's a lot of evidence of buildings of 1850. I was recently in Portland, where I saw buildings that were not exactly of that date, but of that period. And they were beautiful buildings that were very, very economical. Single-story buildings. They had been in use for 150 years, and they were still the most popular and made the best cities. So instead of looking at downtowns, as until just 2 years ago, we looked at to admire downtowns that were 4 stories of mixed use, downtowns that were perhaps 8 stories or 20 stories of mixed use. That increment of construction, that kind of increment of loan, is not really available. And we're back to 1850, where a single-story building could be built on a cash basis essentially, and still made a main street that enabled the town. And that's just one instance of the kind of thinking we need to do. But even in transportation, you know, we say, well, streetcars are less expensive than cars and buses. But we're not even there. I mean, I think we need to enable people to start their own transportation systems. Jitneys. You know, take some of these immigrants that come from countries where it's bottom-up transportation. Let them, you know, license them to have vehicles that work for, you know, that are very, very specific in their trajectories. Let people work for tips. You know, don't obliterate initiative by having everybody licensed well, licensed, of course you need that, but have everybody be sort of fully qualified to, you know, to drive an eight-wheel vehicle, when actually many people know perfectly well how to take 4 people around. And that may be the way to think of public transportation, allowing people to build, you know, with a lot of permits and a lot of drawings, you know, building on their own, and giving them licenses to build rather than permits for the buildings that requires tremendous professionalization. Ideas like that are, I think, closer to what we need to do, we need to be looking at, than retreading our successes of the 20th century.